There's only one thing I'm glad for about Star Trek. Strange New Worlds ending. The end of Star Trek. Strange New Worlds feels like the loss of something rare in modern television, a series that actually managed to balance nostalgia, optimism, and bold creativity. It was a love letter to the original series, a reinvention that never forgot its roots, and a bright beacon in an age when most sci-fi feels dark and cynical. So, to say there's anything to be glad about in its ending might sound impossible. But there is one reason I can make peace with saying goodbye. I'm glad Strange New Worlds got to end on its own terms, before it lost the spark that made it special. That may sound like a small comfort, but in the world of serialized TV, especially for franchises as big as Star Trek, it's almost a miracle. Strange New Worlds had a creative soul that deserved to stay intact, not be stretched, diluted, or reshaped by network fatigue. A show that remembered what Star Trek means. From its very first episode, Strange New Worlds reminded us that exploration, not war, not politics, not endless fan service, was the heart of Star Trek. It wasn't about a single mystery dragged out for 10 episodes or a galactic apocalypse every season. It was about discovery, character, and the spirit of adventure. Each episode stood on its own, evoking the classic TOS formula while injecting modern depth and production value. Captain Christopher Pike Anson Mount was the calm, compassionate leader Starfleet should always aspire to have. Spock, brilliantly played by Ethan Peck, evolved into a character whose internal struggle was as fascinating as his logical reasoning. And characters like Lon, Ortegas, and Chapel brought energy and emotion to every corner of the Enterprise. But even as the show soared, fans could sense the ticking clock. Every series in the streaming age eventually reaches the point where the studio decides its cost outweighs its draw, no matter how beloved it is. Strange New Worlds was never going to run forever. It was too good, too bright, and too idealistic for that. So when the end came, instead of frustration, I felt something closer to gratitude. Because unlike other shows that are canceled mid-story or burn out chasing diminishing returns, Strange New Worlds never got the chance to betray itself. The curse of overstaying its welcome. In a way, Strange New Worlds avoided the fate that's befallen too many Star Trek series before it. Voyager took years to find its identity. Enterprise ended just as it became great. Discovery evolved dramatically across seasons, sometimes to its detriment. Even Picard, with all its nostalgic appeal, struggled to land a consistent tone until its final year. By ending Strange New Worlds now, while it's still loved, Paramount Plus has accidentally preserved its legacy. It never had a bad season. It never jumped the shark. There's no divisive creative reboot to argue about on forums for years. Instead, we got 2 or perhaps 3 seasons of some of the best Star Trek storytelling since The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. That's the beauty of a graceful exit. It lets a series remain pure in fans' memories. And in the ever-expanding multiverse of Star Trek content, where every era is constantly revisited or reimagined, that's a rare gift. Pike's fate, the show's message. What makes this even more poetic is how perfectly Strange New Worlds mirrors its captain's destiny. Pike has always known his future. His story, by design, had an end that couldn't be avoided. That knowledge shaped him into the wise, empathetic leader we came to love, a man who could embrace the unknown with courage because he understood the limits of time. In a sense, the show itself lived by Pike's philosophy. It didn't fear its ending. It accepted it with grace. It gave us joy while it could, knowing that the Enterprise we see here must eventually give way to the one captain by James T. Kirk. That inevitability doesn't make the end any easier, but it makes it meaningful. Just as Pike's fate doesn't diminish his heroism, the show's conclusion doesn't diminish its greatness. If anything, it cements it. A universe that's bigger than any one crew. The end of Strange New Worlds doesn't mean the end of this crew's influence. Star Trek has always been about legacy, how one captain's courage inspires another, how one series' optimism ripples across generations. We already saw glimpses of that with crossover episodes like Those Old Scientists, which connected Strange New Worlds with Lower Decks in one of the franchise's most joyous experiments. And even though the Enterprise under Pike's command might leave our screens, the lessons the show taught, empathy, exploration, curiosity, will continue to shape Star Trek's next chapters. Whether that's through spin-offs, cameos, or simply the creative spirit it reignited, Strange New Worlds will live on as proof that Star Trek can still surprise us. What I'll miss, and why I'm still grateful. I'll miss the warmth of Pike's ready room. I'll miss Spock's quietly hilarious attempts to understand humanity. I'll miss the retro futuristic design that felt both classic and alive with possibility. I'll even miss the musical episode that dared to do something so on Starfleet and yet worked perfectly. But above all, I'll miss how the show made